Race engineer Greg Wheeler has worked on everything from World Rally Cars to Formula One. And his pairing with Grant Denyer has helped the part-time racer to new heights in this year's Fujitsu V8 Supercar Series. One of the most important sessions over the weekend is first practice. That's when the majority of the adjustments are made to the car. And the faster a car can get dialed in, the more successful a driver will be. So when the car first hits the track, the pressure is not only on the driver, but also the engineer.
During the session, the driver will be making his comments of the car, and I'll be adjusting the car according to his comments. When we get back here, we can actually download the data and the information, and then we can actually see if the driver was telling me the truth or not. A driver and an engineer is a very close relationship. It's more like a marriage, and it's based a lot on trust.
Who's Greg?
Greg, your engineer.
Oh yeah, Greg the engineer. Yeah, we have a great relationship. I can't understand a word he's saying. I don't know whether you've spoken to him. He's South African. He needs subtitles. But he seems to push all the right buttons on his laptop, and that's the most important thing. You sit in front of the thing, and you have to be basically a propeller head, you know, to go through the squiggly lines and details. I got no idea what it is. I just tell him what's wrong with the car. He figures it out, and roughly we end up in the right direction. There's 10,000 components that make up a V8 supercar. There's 40 things you can change on each corner of the suspension, so there's a myriad of different combinations, and that's the black art of making a V8 supercar go fast. So you have to have a great engineer who has enormous amounts of experience.
There are really two kinds of cars. There's a very easy car to drive, but it's not particularly fast. And then you get very fast cars, but they're very difficult to drive. And it really depends on the level of the driver. Because Grant is not full-time driving, he's here, there, and everywhere. I'm finding he's obviously quicker in an easier car to drive. And then generally during the weekend, as he gets back in the groove, we tend to stiffen it up and make it a less forgiving car.
Once the racing gets underway, Greg's role changes. He becomes more of a mentor and tactician, making sure the driver can concentrate on just driving.
Nice one, Grant. Focus on that car in front. Catch him up. You've got good car speed, mate. Keep it there. Big gap to the car behind you. Don't worry about your rear.
You know, when his competitors are getting close to him or he's going to lose points, I'll get on the radio and tell him to push. When I say push, it means it's worth taking a risk for the potential of losing a place. Or I'll tell him, just take it easy, let them go. He doesn't like it because he might finish third instead of second. There's a very big difference in winning a race to winning a championship. And this year we pretty much focused on the championship. So it's a numbers game, and so far we're playing it pretty good. I'm really happy.
Getting ready for the third and final race, Damien, and there's been a couple of penalties though. You'll notice that Jonathan Webb, who should start from pole, has been moved back to 5th place, and he's decided to take that penalty. He had the offer of losing points.
I think he's made the right choice. We've seen the pace all weekend. To start 5th is not altogether that bad, although he does have 4 very fast guys in front of him.
And Daniel Gaunt will line up at the rear of the grid from position 19. He was assessed a 10 grid spot penalty for the contact that he made with David Russell. So we're good to go. 15 laps in this third and final race at Queensland Raceway. Can Denyer mount a comeback? Front row of the grid, Brad Lowe taking on David Russell. It's his first time on the front row. How are the nerves? On the rev limiter. Ready to go in race 3. David Russell trying to win on home soil. Moffat and Price on the second row of the grid, and Brad Lowe has missed the jump, and he's been swamped already.
He has absolutely bombed it. Very lucky not to stall. There's a lot of frantic activity. Grant Denyer down the inside of him at 1.
Oh, Shane Price goes around. The Sip and Save Commodore did it all by himself. And David Russell has got an instant lead.
Shane Price, massive massively lucky not to get taken out by the field. Look at the gap though, and Jonathan Webb already in second place, but the dice now is for third.
Moffat covers on Walter. Bradlow trying to regain some ground and goes a long way on Grant Denyer. A touch in the background there. Colin Cedars getting involved with Damien Assailant. And some late news there with Colin Cedars. He actually is not going to be confirmed to run at Bathurst until later in this week. And if he can't drive, Andrew Fisher, the V8 Ute driver, is on standby to join David Cedars.
Jesus, all about life, that's big news. But back at the front, Jonathan Webb, who's had a cracking opening lap, already applying pressure to David Russell before the end of lap 1.
And Jonathan Webb has been so fast. He's clearly been the fastest car here this weekend. Pole position, 2 race wins, 2 fastest laps, and now throwing the pressure onto David Russell. Look at the ground he's made up in just 1 lap.
Pushing very hard, dropping wheels into the dirt. You can see slightly different approaches turning into turn 2. The back of the cars skip and dance around over the bumps.
Remember what we said in the opener to the show, that for the last 5 years, the pole sitter's gone on to win the round. There might be something in that.
And look at Jonathan Webb, class act. No locked brake, just threw it down the inside. David Russell lifted out of the throttle on coming off the corner to make sure that there was no contact. Great job by both guys.
So despite a penalty of 5 grid positions, it hasn't mattered because Webb is through to the lead on lap 2. Russell second, then it's James Moffat, who just hasn't quite had the same pace as Webb and Russell this weekend.
It's absolutely astonishing, as we talked about before. Here's a replay. Bradlow missed the start by about 2 seconds, and that allowed Moffat to go to the left, Walter to go to the right, and Jonathan Webb. But Shane Price was the big story through turn 1. So lucky spinning on his own not to get cleaned up.
He did that one all by himself. Dick Johnson watching on as Grant Denyer continues on in race 3. There's Shane Price back among the field. Daniel Gauntway working his way through. There's Mark Howard, Colin Corkery and Colin Cedars.
That's great vision, watching those cars rise and fall over the bumps, even on this angle. Is there a better sound than a V8 supercar?
Yeah, probably about 20 of them.
And as they exit turn 2 there, and you hear the sound of the engine and bits of rubber flying off everywhere, it's a very dramatic part of the racetrack.
Sam Walter a little bit wide on the exit of turn 3. And the issue here at this stage of the weekend, the drivers all have 2 sets of Dunlop control tyres to use. It's how they use them across the 3 races that really does determine what sort of a situation they've got left for this last one.
And we see again Leanne Tanner, that's the 2nd or 3rd time we've seen her off into the dirt this weekend.
She'll team up with David Wall in the BF model Falcon for the Wilson security team at Phillip Island and Bathurst. It's been a tough couple of rounds for her in this ex-Jason Bright car, an engine that's been down on power, but it's all been good miles in terms of actual hands-on racing.
When you're throwing yourself into the Phillip Island 500 and the Bathurst 1000, the epitome, the peak, it's fantastic to be able to get the opportunity to get some miles under the belt in this category.
Sam Walter's had a pretty consistent weekend, a 10th and a 2nd in the 2 races so far.
Bradlow, who made a mess of the start, let's face it, is now crawling back up to the back of Sam Walter.
He's done a really good job this weekend. Grant Denyer is on the fight back as well. It's race 3 from Queensland Raceway. Back at Queensland Raceway with the Fujitsu V8 Supercar Series, and while we were away, that didn't mean that the action stopped.
Well, Rowlandson, it was a slow motion spin, and Emery, that's why Tander ended up in the dirt. That there is a clear-cut drive-through penalty.
And we're hearing from the officials that that is what's going to happen. So Jeff Emery will be penalised
4 to go.
and drop right down. That's Greg Wheeler giving Grant Denyer the update. Rodney Jane, a consistent weekend, hasn't quite had the results, but some improved car speed this weekend saw the former Carrera Cup driver qualify 5th. And that's his best qualifying performance in just his third round.
That's an incredible performance. He's proving now that he can do the lap speed. All he needs to work on is a bit more consistency, and he'll find himself creeping up to the top 5.
We've seen David Russell, Jonathan Webb and James Moffat clearly be the best 3 drivers this year. What's your take on Daniel Gawn?
Tough. A lot of pressure on the young guy. I mean, he's with Stone Brothers. He's been given the opportunity to do the endurance races, which I'm sure he was aware of a lot earlier than any of us. So, I mean, while in one sense that might give you some comfort, it also puts a lot more pressure on yourself. For me, in his debut season, sure, he's made some mistakes, but he's got shown a lot of promise.
And talking to Andy McElroy, the team boss there, they've made their 4th spring change of the weekend, trying to chase that car for this 3rd and final race. Taz Douglas hanging on here from Damien Assaylet, and these 2 boys will make their debut in the Championship Series at Phillip Island, but Taz just ran it in too deep at turn 6.
Well, as we head into the late afternoon at the back end of this race, the track surface does start to cool down a little bit. The tyres are getting old. 2 laps to go after 3 races, so he just pushed it a little bit hard under brakes at 6.
This Taz Douglas car is an ex-Perkins Engineering chassis driven last year by Jack Perkins. Damien Assaylet will do double duty at Mount Panorama. He'll run this car in the Fujitsu Series and this car, but in green colours, in the main race at Bathurst.
And another guy in his debut season, Brad Lowe, to start on the front row of race 3 at a round of the Fujitsu Series. That says on paper that you're doing a great job. We saw the mistake at the start, but importantly, he kept his cool, he didn't make any more mistakes, and he now finds himself in a good position.
His approach has been a lot better this weekend. Coming into this weekend, he said, I'm not aiming at the podium, I'm just there to do a clean, solid job. And Assaylet showing the nose to Taz Douglas. But Matthew White's got a couple of young chargers here who are still learning the ropes, but showing some signs.
Well, Matthew White's been around for 148 years, so he's well experienced. And with a championship leader in Jonathan Webb, 2 young guys, 2 new guys, Damien Assaylet and Brad Lowe, I think Matthew White has laid out his experience for them, and it looks like they're taking notice.
Great shot again of those bumps into turn 1. And it's right at the braking zone, which makes it really difficult to get the front turned into the apex.
Well, if you haven't got the right shock control over those bumps and you miss the turn in by half a car length, you'll find yourself out in the dirt off the track on the exit of turn 1.
I guess there's 2 ways to look at things. In the case of some drivers, they hate this place. They reckon it's terrible. But on the other side, some drivers view it as an absolute challenge, and pulling off a move at turn 3 like that is a challenge, but one that Assaylet's bet.
Brilliant job. The only way you can execute that move is if you have the car set up right over turn 1 bumps, and the turn into turn 2 and the bumps on exit allows a good run onto the straight, and you can bomb it down someone at turn 3 as Assaylet did just then.
And you've got to remember, in the Fujitsu Series, the cars still use the H-pattern gearbox, whereas the Championship Series uses the sequential shift. And Matthew White in the Brad Lowe car is actually going to put the sequential in for the endurance races to give the young guys a chance to learn. But this guy knows about both types of gearboxes. He'll be in the number 18 Jim Beam car with Warren Luff for Phillip Island and Bathurst. He'll drive this car at Bathurst, and he's going to get a lot of laps and head into that one with a lot of confidence.
I'll tell you what, Warren Luff was quickest on Friday in the main series V8 Supercars in the Jim Beam Racer. Jonathan Webb has shown outstanding pace this weekend in the Fujitsu Series. That team is looking good.
And he's on target to do something that's not been done in 6 years. That is to take pole position, 3 race wins and 3 fastest laps. It hasn't been done since Mark Winterbottom at Mallala in 2003.
Jonathan Webb, pump the chest up, my friend. It has been a stellar, outstanding performance.
And the streak of pole sitters going on to win the round will be extended. 6 out of 6 in the history books. And for Jonathan Webb this weekend, it's 3 out of 3. The Gulf Western Falcon cleans them up at the paperclip.
And to show how tough this championship is, Russell, who's second in the championship, finds himself second, and third place, Moffat, finds himself in third.
Grandetti is 4th in the championship, but not 4th in the race.
He was certainly ripped off in race 2, had a right to be angry, but he did fight back in race 3 and bank some good points.
Webb, Russell and Moffat the top 3. Sam Walters had a great weekend, as too was Brad Lowe. Carl Reindler in 7th. Jane and Price rounded out the top 10 in race 3. No one could get near Webb. A Sailor in 11s from Taz Douglas. Jeff Emery, after that drive-through, rounds out the field. And Colin Cedars, a tail shaft failure, forced him to retire. When we come back, we'll wrap it up from Queensland Raceway. For Jonathan Webb, he takes his second round win in the Fujitsu Series. David Russell and James Moffat round out the podium. Bradlow and Sam Walter with their best ever finishes in the Fujitsu Series. And Grant Denyer in 6th can only rue the weekend that could have been. But for Jonathan Webb, he extends his lead in the title.
I think it's very, very difficult to do what I've done this weekend, particularly with that reverse 10. We just had a really good car, and to get around all those cars and make it to the front, I must say I was pretty surprised myself. But boys have just done a great job, and we stayed out of trouble most of the way through, and I think that's part of what got us to the front.
And you take back the championship lead. That's important with 2 rounds to go.
It is very important. That's what we've been chasing all year this year. It's our first win this weekend, and we've been doing nothing but chasing the championship. So I said after the last round of the boys, it was time to get out there and win some races, and we've done that.
Let's have a look at the championship points. Grant Denyer now in 4th, just 31 points down on James Moffat, who in turn is 173 down on Jonathan Webb, who will take a 28-point advantage to the next round at Mount Panorama. So the Fujitsu V8 Supercar Series remains evenly poised. 2 rounds left to go, 4 individual races, and a massive 600 points left up for grabs. The championship is far from done. The Fujitsu Series now goes on a little bit of a break. The V8 Supercars, though, they move into endurance mode. It's the LNH 500 next up from the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit. Then the Fujitsu Series is back, supporting the big one, the Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000 in October. And then, of course, it's a race we're looking forward to for the first time. It's the Sydney Telstra 500. We'll crown champs in both the V8 Supercar Series and in the Fujitsu V8 Supercar Series. Thanks to Damien White and the whole crew. I'm Aaron Noonan. We'll see you next time.